Hello everyone, this is Professor Reha here with another class examination. This time we're considering the Tactician class, which is the combination of the Soldier and the Inquisitor. Now, this is a formerly somewhat popular combination. I don't know if this particular rough build still is, but it used to be a pretty hot topic to take this combination, blast cadence out to maximum, all the everything, slap it all on there. Go into ranged expertise, and then at this particular point the world is your oyster. It's entirely possible to go into Word of Renewal as your healing instead of Menhir's Will, and run this. Now if you're a little confused why you would max this out and why the healing would really set you up for excellent damage, and why this does increase damage, you'll notice here that this is a 30-second duration with a 15-second skill recharge. In other words, this lasts for twice as long as it actually cools down for. You use this, and for the next 30 seconds you have all of the, with the exception of the healing happens the instant you activate it, and it doesn't heal you over time. This is not a heal over time. This is not a hot. But the rest of these effects, the decreased damage from Chthonics and Eldritch, the increased damage to Chthonics and Eldritch, the increased resistances, the increased damage, the reduced duration of your crowd control effects on you, your movement speed increase, your defensive ability increase, these all last for the full 30 seconds, and you can refresh this every 15 seconds. So you can have this constantly running, if you want, and often it's a pretty good idea to do so. So you can absolutely do that, and if you want even more damage, you can slap down an Inquisitor seal at your feet and do even more damage. Now at this particular point, what I typically will do is slap on some bursting rounds, some chilling rounds, some storm spread, and I'll usually use Olarin's Rage just because the movement speed, along with the movement speed boost from Word of Renewal, is a really good time. I'll usually pull these out here as well. And then usually I'll go into good old Decorated Soldier, slap on a couple of points in military conditioning for some extra health, and you have yourself an extremely potent, absolutely maniacal amount of regular damage output. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, what about, groups? Ah, yeah, well, we have fighting form. We just pierce right through you. We have all kinds of insane damage output here. Don't worry about it. You have a lot of different options here with cadence to work. You don't need to go into Decorated Soldier. You don't need to go into these rounds. Maybe you want to go into Word of Pain for your elemental damage. Grab the Pierce Resistance Reduction of Death Sentence. That's great too. That's also very effective. Maybe you don't want the Inquisitor Seal. Maybe you want instead Deadly Aim. That works. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can make this work. Maybe you want to do the elemental version. You slap on Discord, and you keep on using Steel Resolve, because whether or not your Discord is doing elemental or physical damage, it's still increasing the internal trauma damage. So it's whatever at that particular junction. You have a bunch of different things you can do here with that. And of course, if you wanted to go with a melee build, you can absolutely do that too. You don't have to use ranged for this. Word of Renewal is one of the 3 skills that I would say this build can always... This is one of the skills that you should always sit down and at least consider with this combination. Word of Renewal all the way through. For Soldier, obviously Cadence. You'll notice a theme with Soldier. Cadence is almost always a really good pick. Almost always. There is a little bit of debate on the Shaman and on the Demolitionist. I still tend to favor Cadence over those two. Demolitionist, it depends on where I'm trying to take the build. But for Shaman, usually I'll actually go for Cadence over the Savagery unless I'm going into Stormcaller's Pact, in which case, definitely Savagery. But for this one, yeah, Cadence. Cadence is always going to work, regardless of what you wind up doing. Cadence is a great decision. Like I said, Word of Renewal is an absolutely fantastic decision. And I would additionally argue that the Inquisitor's Seal is an excellent decision. Now, the reason why is because that plus 85% to all damage, that fire retaliation, the crit damage increase, a little bit of piercing damage on there if you want that, a little bit of elemental damage, which means that as long as you're using a melee weapon that does pierce damage, or you're using a gun, you're going to take full advantage of Arcane Empowerment here. Just that little bit of piercing, even then it doesn't really make a difference. That piercing damage will be fine either way. That elemental damage doesn't much care. It's just a matter of whether or not you're increasing it. So, there is a whole lot of options here. Now, generally speaking, that's generally... I just said generally twice, I apologize. But I'll usually focus on one of those two. That's a pretty good time. You could just as effectively go into Stormbox of Elgaloth, go into Lightning Tether, grab the 2 runes, grab Artifact Handling. That can be absolutely great, because this can really boost their damage by quite a bit. That doesn't even include some of the other potential modifiers you can get from equipment. Each of them does some kind of physical version of damage. This has piercing damage, this has regular physical, and that's, great. So you do have that benefit going for you. So you can use that instead. You could just as easily go full melee, go full protections, health, defense, go into Aura of Censure. You can do that. Actually, heck, if you really wanted to, you could go Aura of Censure, you could go Cadence into Discord, right? Go with, just for kicks, Word of Renewal, all the way, why not? You could go into Inquisitor Seal, and you can go into Military Conditioning, Shield Training. Maybe you want to max out Fighting Form, maybe you want to go into Deadly Momentum. Totally up to you. You can do that. And then you want to go, well, let me see. What else do we feel like doing? Maybe you want to go into Deadly Aim. Sure. And then you can just stand there and wail on them as the fire. This is even, you still have a good 15 points you could throw. You could throw some into Decorated Soldier and Veterancy if you really wanted to. You have all kinds of options. You could grab Overguard if you really wanted to. But the point of that is, you can build the kind of tank that is guaranteed to survive any conflict and is guaranteed to win any conflict given sufficient time. Essentially, you can stand there and burn them for absolute years, wail on them with Cadence, have an absolute grand old time, and eventually win. It's hilarious in some cases, but ultimately the main point of that, you could, if you're playing with allies and you're really dedicated to the idea of full tank, go Warcry, absolutely. Especially with Inquisitor Seal, that's a pretty good combination. But you can absolutely make that work, and actually this is one of my favorite multiplayer combinations. This is if I'm looking to go really die hard on a multiplayer game with my family, then this is the combination I'm immediately going to go to if I want to play tank. If I'm going to play full tank with family, this is what I go for. Because I can grab Warcry, I can just put 1 point to Warcry, grab Inquisitor Seal, grab Arcane Empowerment, grab Aura of Censure. And this is important because this provides elemental resistance reduction to any enemy you're damaging with this, and reduces their damage the whole time, and potentially can disrupt their skills, which can save the lives of your allies. This is fantastic. Now, whether or not I decide to go melee or ranged doesn't make a difference. I'm usually melee with this, just because Aura of Censure, obviously, Warcry, obviously. And then I can go into Field Command, right? I can go into Cadence for at least some damage of my own, at the very least Discord. Whether or not I go into these other ones really depends. I'm going to go into Word of Renewal, so I can heal my allies, because it heals everyone within a radius of you. It heals everyone within 20 meters of you if they're an ally. Grab all this, increase their damage as well. I usually will go into this, right here. Grab Terrify, for a good old time. And then I'll either go into Decorated Soldier, or maybe I don't go into Terrify, I go into Military Conditioning, or I go into Overguard. It really depends on what my equipment looks like at that time. Sometimes I'll go into both, because I can actually grab this here, take these 10 points away, right here, and then go into Military Conditioning. That's fantastic. Or sometimes, again, depending on my equipment, maybe I'll go into Shield Training instead. The end of the build really depends on what I'm armed with. But this is an absolutely incredible... I'm going to ignore Overguard for a second there. This is a startling, absolutely amazing way to provide the maximum support to your allies. You're boosting their offensive and defensive ability, you're increasing their armor, you're increasing their attack and casting speed, you're increasing their damage with this, you're increasing their damage here if they stand in this with you, you're increasing their internal trauma and elemental damage here, you're decreasing the enemy's elemental resistance, and this all doesn't even consider devotion or equipment. And you can see the absolutely... You're also, by the way, reducing... I forgot to mention that. You're also reducing any enemy damaged by you, their damage reduced. It's incredible. You're healing them. You're keeping them alive. You're even increasing their movement speed. This combination, more than any other combo, is the ultimate multiplayer support. And with just Cadence... and, well, Warcry for the taunt, but with just Cadence as the damage output, whether you're using Discord or not, you're still doing at least some damage. You're not just standing there relying on the burn, or just to buff your allies. You can, in fact, do some pretty decent amounts of damage. Now, the reason why this build doesn't really use a heavy amount of activatable skills, you've got just Word of Renewal and just Inquisitor Seal, is because with this taking energy reserves, this being energy reserved, you can understand that there is a large amount of your energy being taken up by this. Unless you've built around that specifically, it can get kind of tough to do, to manage that little amount of energy. So, really, you only need, good old Word of Renewal here, which ultimately winds up with 70, 84, 98, and then Inquisitor Seal is just a straight 73 across. So, at the end of the day, you building like this is the absolute last word in teamwork. There are other abilities in other classes that absolutely can help allies. Yes, this is true. The Familiar from the Occultist, Flame Touched in Temper from the Demolitionist, Thermite Mine from the Demolitionist is also worthy of note there. Blood of Drieg from the Occultist, that's all great. But this right here is the best. Not only do you have Field Command, which applies huge boosts to everything your allies can do unconditionally, but this is one of the very few exclusive skills that can really help allies out as well as yourself. Most exclusive skills focus purely on the player, but Aura of Censure, with just its resistance reduction and damage reduction to the enemies that it's damaging, that is the tipping point here. And, of course, again, you don't have to do this. This is just how I build full co-op if I'm going to go for that, and it's stupendous. But you could also do a single hand ranged with a shield, so you can use shield training if you want to. Why you would want to with ranged, if you're playing solo, that matters, but if you're playing multiplayer with friends, you really aren't going to need a shield when you're playing ranged. But you can absolutely use Cadence. You can use Cadence with these rounds up here in the dual wielding and just go purely into Aura of Conviction as well, or Oleron's Rage, whichever one you want. You can go into a full... You can also slap in Markovian's Advantage, which is a pretty good time with these. It's just the sheer amount of potential boosts to your regular attack means that even though each of them only individually has a 24% chance of activating, or 25, or whatever, that's 26, I believe these are 24, I end up at 22, okay, these are all 22. So these, you have over a 20% chance for each of these to activate, but with the percentages as high as they typically get, 20s, somewhere in the 20s, one of these is going to be activating pretty much all the time. It's just a matter of which one. Sometimes multiple will activate at the same time, which is a magical time. But you can do a regular old plain attack, regular attack focus build. Go for it. Cadence focus? Sure. Absolutely works. You want to go melee and you want to blast people with Force Wave and Blitz? Sure. Grab Word of Renewal. This is actually the only combination that I will say use their healing over the Menhir's Will. Menhir's Will is nice, but Word of Renewal increases your damage. It heals about as much, but in an instant, and you have to think about it. But, minor gripes. But you can really effectively use pretty much anything in this side with the Inquisitor and vice versa. There's no... I'm going to actually surprise you by saying there is no ability here that does not work in some way with any other ability, except possibly Flames of Ignifar. This one can work if you're focusing on that elemental damage. If you're not focusing on elemental damage, you probably don't need Flames of Ignifar. With that one half exception, that's only half an exception. This also somewhat applies to Stormbox. With those two half exceptions, I forgot about Stormbox for a second there. With those two half exceptions, everything here can work really well with the other one, and you can... There's really no wrong way you can build this, and you can build this, like I said, to some pretty awesome extremes. I actually almost never build a shield with this combination, simply because I very rarely feel the need to. If I'm going with the full retail build, which is, generally speaking, going to be Aura of Conviction here, you're going to be going into the Inquisitor Seal with Arcane Empowerment. You're again going to go into Word of Renewal, because I love that with this combination. It's always awesome. You're going to go into Counter-Strike, and then you're just going to build some passives, really. Or you can grab Cadence if you want to there too as well. Again, it's totally up to you. But, yeah, this is, I think, one of the most interesting to play in multiplayer. In single player, it's not quite as effective. It really is the last word in cooperation, though. So if you are playing with friends and you want to absolutely make sure that all your friends get out of there alive, because you get a little sad when they die, this is where you go. This is what's going to keep your friends alive. This is what's going to keep you alive. This will allow you to absolutely burn down an incredibly large amount of bosses if your friends and you can coordinate properly. And I mean, just have Discord running in the background, no problem. So, with that being said, it sounds like I had a little bit less to say about this combination, but really beyond the co-op here and the potential applications of Cadence with the dual pistols, or alternatively the potential application of the physical damage combined with just Word of Renewal alone can be worth it, although quite frankly Deadly Aim is pretty consistently awesome too. You have this amazing potential with this combination to do something no other combination can effectively do. So I hope you learned something cool here. This is one of my absolute favorites to play. This is my favorite to play in multiplayer. Hands down, unquestioning. Multiplayer scenario, this is what I go to. Whenever I just want to kick back, have a good time, do a character for fun, pure fun, old reliable right here. So I hope you learned something new. I hope you give this combination a try if you play it with your friends. It's it's a lot of fun. Even if you're playing solo, give it a try. The dual wielding Cadence is quite potent and can really burn down a lot of enemies very quickly. It's a good time. This class always is a consistently good time. And yeah, I understand that you may not have the DLC, but honestly, just for this class alone, it really is worth it. With that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or ideas, what have you, please leave them down in the comments below. I do read them. And, of course, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe, and have a great 24 hours.